Hello and welcome back to the third round. The Swiss Crocodile has been Märklin's flagship product for decades. Märklin is even credited for this locomotive's nickname, which it was the first to use in its catalogues in the 1930s. Each new version usually showcases the firm's capabilities, incorporating the latest bells and whistles available at the time of release. Marketed towards the high end with a price to match, the models were among the most, if not the most expensive items available in the catalogues between the late 1940s and the early 1990s. Things are a bit different today in this respect, but the Crocodile still holds on to its status and as of late 2024 is still the most expensive electric locomotive Märklin offers. As such, they have always been aspirational products, falling under the one day maybe category for most people. That day has arrived for me, and I have even been experiencing a bit of a reptile infestation as in very short succession I managed to get my hands on a few of the Märklin crocodiles I needed for the collection. And here they are. This includes the brown one on the track by the turntable, which you might have noticed in the background of recent videos of mine. This was all very much unexpected, but that's not unusual. On my journey towards the goal of owning one example of every model released by Märklin in the 1980s, I found things tend to come on the market in waves. Given their desirability, these models are usually treated with a lot of respect. Of course, there are exceptions. The brown example I received was one of them. It was dirty and probably put on a shelf when it stopped working due to lack of servicing. But more often than not, most have only had a few hours track time and have spent most of their recent life in a box or in a display cabinet. This, unfortunately, can also cause a few problems, likely to ruin a first impression, or maybe even Christmas for some. My two other new arrivals also don't work properly, so in this video I am going to try and fix them. I'll use the opportunity to highlight a few tooling quirks, and will hopefully end the video with a bit of traffic. If you like the sound of that, you can stay with me for a bit and follow me as I get these little treasures ready for the track. Before we set off, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe and alert button before leaving today. Super thanks are also available if you feel the content deserves it. Whatever the option you choose will be much appreciated. Many thanks! Now, on to our topic. I have lined up the new arrivals. I don't want to geek out too much today, but I have also taken out the versions I already had for a quick overview. This gives us a display of 5 of the 6 models released in the 1980s. In chronological order, we have 3056 with running number 13302. First released in 1976, it is a plastic body on die-cast chassis construction. The model was given a few minor updates over time, first to its windows with version 3, and then pantographs with version 4. It's the version we have here. This version was available from 1978 until 1981. In 1982, 3056 was quietly replaced by 3356. This is one of the new arrivals. As you can see, it is identical. The running number is the same, so are the colors and details. The only difference can be found inside the model in the form of an electronic pre-reversing unit. 3356 was among the first 3 models to ever receive this feature in 1982. Oddly enough, Märklin barely mentioned it in the catalogues, and none of the models were listed as new. This version was produced until 1986. Next, we have a version included in set 3300, a one-time limited series made for the 125th anniversary of the firm and manufactured in 1985. Here's the box. I presented this set a while back in a dedicated video. You'll find the link at the top for your convenience. This version is based on the existing 3356, still with running number 13302, but in many aspects, Märklin gave the world a taste of things to come. First of all, the locomotive body is made of metal. The chassis is now grey. The roof is fitted with green insulators. The handrails around the body are now yellow, and the makers as well as the running number plates are now etched and separately applied. Some of these changes would be replicated on the next release, 3356 version 2, with a running number 13303, which I am sadly still missing in the collection, so here's a catalogue picture instead. We can see that many of the changes made for the anniversary set, such as the yellow handrails or etched plates, also apply to this version. But Märklin reverted back to a plastic body on die-cast chassis combination. We have red insulator on the roof again, but we now have a yellow marker on the hood at each end. This version was produced until 1988. Then we have another arrival. This is 3352, running number 14301, released in 1987. It is obviously brown, but the body is made of metal. We have different fronts with the addition of a tilting footplate and I think radiators at each end. The model also features Swiss lighting. At last! This model was also available in digital under reference number 3652 at the same time. This is version 1, produced until 1990. Between 1990 and 1995, 2 more versions of this model were released. Finally, we have the last arrival. This is 3556, running number 14305, released in 1989. We now have a more prototypical green. The body is made of metal. The ends of the model are back to the configuration found on the earlier 3356, but with Swiss lighting this time. The locomotive was one of the first models fitted with a 5-star propulsion system, which was introduced the same year as the initial release. The model was available in digital from day one under reference number 3656, and later also under reference number 3756. This one had motor regulation. The model was in production until 1993. The 3756 reference lived on until the early 2000s with a different running number. There we go. This should give you an idea. I have omitted a few versions, such as press event gifts or special commissions that weren't listed in the catalogues during that time. As with everything Märklin made in that period, these models are technically rock solid. The main things to pay attention to are of cosmetic nature, as it is difficult to find spare trim parts. The front arched handrails are usually just a piece of wire, so can be straightened if they look out of shape. Broken pantographs shouldn't be a problem either, as some types are still in production and others can be found relatively easily, but they are not cheap. Do look out for broken isolators and other roof parts, and check the ladders and the plastic details sticking out here and there are all intact. Another common thing are missing windows, which tend to fall off as the glue can deteriorate over time. This happens most with the side window, which can easily be pushed in when handling the model. There is a good chance a missing window has simply dropped inside the locomotive, but it might not be that at all, so it is best to ask the seller if you want it to be on the safe side. That would be it for the trivia. Now it is time to get our hands dirty. We'll be looking at 3356 and 3556, which both exhibit similar symptoms. The 3356 responds to changes of direction, but its wheels are locked on one side. The 3556 is pretty much the same. It also moves and its front wheels are locked too. The problem is caused by hardened or resinified lubricant and is a very common occurrence on models that haven't moved for a long time. It is so common that all the other crocodiles I own were suffering from similar issues when I got them, including the brown 3352, which I already fixed off camera. I am expecting other things will need addressing, but I won't find out until the wheels are free, so this is where we'll start, then we'll work our way up. All the crocodiles from that era have a similar layout, whatever the materials used. I think this stayed the same until the early 2010s. Taking one apart is remarkably easy and only requires a flathead screwdriver. The cab body in the center needs to be lifted first. This is done by removing a single screw under the chassis towards the side. The body then lifts off. The hoods covering the noses become accessible. These are simply clipped on and can be pried off. That's it, the chassis is now exposed. I remember emitting a sigh of relief the first time I opened one of those. Anyone who has serviced a few Märklin models will immediately feel in familiar territory, as the motor, pre-reversing and reversing units and bulbs are the same as on other Märklin products of the era. Now let's take care of the wheels. I am going to use the method I described in a little helpers video I published a while back, link at the top, because it only uses stuff that most of us will probably have lying around somewhere. In general, if wheels don't move and nothing looks bent or damaged, then it is most likely caused by dried or congealed lubricant. If some form of valve gear is installed, it is not a good idea to try and force things free. Not only could some rods become bent, but wheels could also come off their bearing, which is not a good thing at all on Märklin locomotives. To safely check if axles are seized, we can use their side play. An axle should be able to move from side to side with no pressure, like this one. So this one's free. We'll try the next one. It is free too, and the last one as well. I wasn't expecting that. Now, there is one more axle for the transmission wheels, located between the first and second axles. Yeah, it doesn't move. So, I am going to remove the pickup shoe for better access to little holes located just underneath this axle. To free the axle, I am going to use some penetrating fluid, but you could also use some SR24 or other locomotive cleaning fluid, although that option might only be available to people living in continental Europe. Oil would work as well, but it might take quite a long time. I'll use some WD-40 because that's what I've got. I decanted it in a syringe to minimize the mess. And I'm going to apply the penetrating fluid through the little openings. It doesn't take much. Fluids usually don't take too long, but given the restricted access and the small amount I used, I'm going to leave everything alone for a couple of minutes so the WD-40 has a chance to do its job. Alright, I've put some paper down to catch the mess. Let's see where we are. Yes, it is sluggishly moving now. All I need to do is turn the wheels backwards and forwards until I no longer feel any resistance. And that's it. Everything feels free now. So I'm going to check the wheels on the motor bogie as well. And they are all free, so that's good stuff. So I can now proceed with servicing. The service is the same as on other Märklin locomotives. To open the motor, we need to remove 2 screws. There is a little access hole for the bottom screw. I'll remove the brushes, which I should have done first really, apologies to the purists. And with a bit of gentle wiggling, we should be able to maneuver the cover plate out of the way. And look at that! Spotless! I don't think this model has seen much track. The armature looks very good too. The carbon deposits are easily wiped off. Yep, this definitely points to very low usage. We'll check the gears for deposits of dry grease too. There we are. This is to be expected on a model with seized parts. Any such deposits can cause problems, so need to be removed. If it doesn't come off with a dry cotton bud, a bit of WD-40 or cleaning fluid or even alcohol will do the trick here. Okay, we are ready for reassembly. I'll apply some grease on the ends of the armature. This will avoid whiny motor noises on the track. Then I'll reinstall the motor cover plate. I'll quickly check the motor can turn. And that works. Cool. And I'm now ready to reinstall the screws. Now, at that stage, I think it is worth spending a bit of time on some electrical aspects. This family of models is probably the most sensitive to conductivity issues among the Märklin production of the 1980s. The 3056 is relatively resilient, but anything from 3356 onwards, less so. The weak spot is ground connectivity. Usually on Märklin models of that era, the entire chassis is connected to ground via the wheels. With the Crocodile, we don't have a chassis to speak of. We have 2 large bogies attached to the cab floor in the center. This articulated construction is good for curves, but not great at all for conductivity. The pivot points have a lot of play and cannot provide a reliable connection. Looking at the motor bogie, the leading wheels are fitted to non-conductive plastic trucks without any additional pickups like the ones you'd find on some Steve locomotives, and only 2 of the driving wheels have direct electrical contact with the rails. The others have traction tires. We have the same leading wheel configuration on the front bogie, but we have no traction tires on this side. This makes the front bogie the most reliable ground connection for the model. Märklin knew that and even fitted a connection between the motor bogie and the front bogie to improve ground connectivity. As a result, it is very important to ensure the front wheels are clean and free from oxidization, and also that the solder tag for the ground wire on the motor shield is attached properly with good contact to its screw. Both might require a clean too if the contacts look oxidized. Right, with this in mind, let's finish the service. We'll check the solder tag first. I'll give it a clean with a bit of contact cleaner, and I'll clean the motor screw as well. Now the fiddly bit. Pass the screw through the access hole, then through the solder tag, and try and find the hole in the motor cover plate. Then fasten the screw while making sure the tag stays at the top. Okay, that bit is done. Now the front wheels. They look good, but I'm going to use a track rubber to remove any oxidization that might be there. I'm doing this very gently with almost no pressure. And I'll reattach the pickup shoe. And after blowing the dust away and removing any remaining packaging debris here and there, we can proceed with lubrication. It's the customary tiny drop of oil on each axle bearing, not forgetting the leading wheels too. Let's wipe away any excess oil, and we are ready for a test. Look at that, all fine, but we can see that one of the lights is not as bright as the other. So we're going to take care of that too. Here the issue is usually corrosion, so it is a matter of removing the bulb, cleaning the screw fitting, then the contacts inside the light fitting, and reassembling. And there we go. Now we can put everything back together. We'll clip the hoods back on first. I'll quickly check the pantograph screws are tight, and they are. Then I can put the cap back on and screw it down. That's it, we're done for this one. We'll put it away for now, and we'll take care of our next victim. And here is 3556. It looks in very good shape too. We already know we have wheel issues to deal with. And the pickup shoe is also bent on this one. Okay, let's take it apart. It is the same procedure as before. Screw first. Take the cab off. Then one of the hoods. And the other one. The chassis is quasi-identical, but on this model we have a few differences in terms of equipment. The model is fitted with a 5-star propulsion system. It consists of 2 parts, a reversing unit with motor regulation. It's fitted at the front. We can see the little potentiometers used to adjust acceleration, delay and maximum speed. And under the familiar looking motor plate and windings is a 5-pole armature. I am going to spare you the standard servicing steps here and just concentrate on the faults. Let's take care of those wheels. We'll do our wiggle test again. This axle is seized, the next one is free, and the last one is seized too. So it's different from the previous logo, but it's the same cause. So we'll use a few drops of WD-40 here too. Then we'll wiggle the axles. Then move them back and forth until the resistance is gone. And that's it for this bogie. Now, the motor bogie. Here some axles are also sluggish. They can move, but barely. So after taking the motor apart, I followed the same process as before. And after more wiggling and turning, it looked like we were back in business. But as I was progressing through the service, I still felt a bit of resistance when turning the wheels, so I decided to go a step further. I removed the plastic cover to have better access to the bearings. So this one's clipped on and it can be levered out very gently without applying any pressure on the brakes, which are quite fragile. And with it out of the way and better access, I found the offending gear was on the transmission axle again. We can see that the wheels turn independently from the axle and the gear. So the fact that they are free doesn't necessarily mean that the axle is. So I applied more penetrating fluid, and after more wiggling and turning, this time we were truly back in business. Now on this model, the leading wheels also required the same treatment. And after a full change of tires, too much time spent reattaching the coupling rods, motor reassembly and lubrication steps, we were finally ready for a test. And nothing moved. A quick look revealed a broken solder joint on the overhead switch. I was obviously not careful enough when handling the model. Alright, I have resoldered the wire, and let's try it now. And we are operational. All fine. Okay, it's time for reassembly. That's it, we're all done. So, I'm going to tidy up a bit. One moment, please. And we are back. And the locos are all out on the block system. Based on all the footage I took for this video, the total time spent on the two locomotives was about 2.5 hours. Off camera, a couple of weeks before this video, I spent an additional 2 hours on the brown 3352, which I had to completely take apart. I think it was run until it stopped working and that no service was ever done on it, at least not by its last owner. It was a bit of a disaster as it also sustained some shipping damage I had to fix, but I could take care of everything in the end, as you can see now. Whilst it can be enjoyable to get 40 locomotives running again, it is very sad that perfectly good models end up in such a state. These things were made to move, and their worst enemy is idleness. If they are not run, not only will old lubricants resinify, as we have seen today, but corrosion is also likely to set in and cause further damage. It doesn't have to be this way. All it takes is to put them on the track from time to time for 30 minutes. This only requires the smallest of overhauls, and the models will take care of themselves. If the right lubricants are used, this can even happen only every other year. The 3056 and the anniversary set locomotive I already had in the collection were last serviced over 2 years ago. The 3056 has probably had about 5 hours of operation since then, and the anniversary set locomotive ran for 2 hours just after its service 2 years ago and hasn't moved since. I didn't have to do anything before railing them, not even apply a drop of oil, and they are running as they should. As with most 80s Märklin models, the more crocodiles are run, the better their driving characteristics become. Frequent use will not cause any damage, as it would take thousands of hours for components such as gears to start deteriorating. This would take decades. As much as people like to think they run their own little miniature wonderland, in a private setting, no model will run continuously for 12 hours a day as they do in Hamburg, so these models can be enjoyed with peace of mind. My new arrivals still need a few hours to reach what I would call their sweet spot. At the moment, they still behave like older Italian sports cars, unhappy at low revs, jumpy or with an uneven speed in places, and the noise level is a bit high. This should settle and improve over time, and they'll start purring along smoothly like the little electromechanical marvels they are should. So it's time for me to sit back and enjoy these little treasures for a bit. If you'd like me to set up a running session with a bit of matching stock, leave a comment down below. If the demand is there, I try and put something together. For now, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, hopefully enough for you to give it a like and maybe subscribe if you haven't already done so, or even send a super thanks my way if you feel the video was worth it. Thanks as ever for all your support, and bye for now.